Always revisit your property development numbers all the time. My name is Ritchie Clapson, I'm a chartered structural engineer and I've been involved in the property industry now for over 40 years. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to you why you need to keep revisiting your property development numbers. When I'm talking about numbers, what do I mean? I mean your numbers for your deal analysis. Your numbers that stack up that deal. It could be the resale value, the selling of those properties at the back end. It could be the construction costs to build out that development. It could be the agent's fees. It could be the consultant's fees. In fact, it's all of your numbers. You should revisit those numbers at least every time there's a fundamental change and perhaps every month. Because if there are no changes, it won't take you long. Why is this important? Well, the world changes. Just think about the stages that you're going to go through in a development assessment, a financial development assessment. First of all, you're going to be looking at this project at a high level. You're going to be deciding whether to bid or not to bid on the development opportunity. At that stage, you're working on some very rounded numbers, maybe some pounds per square metre prices, maybe some percentages for your consultants based on your pound per square metre prices. So you've got broad numbers based on broad numbers. And of course, then maybe, just maybe, you get your offer accepted. Well, of course, now you need to firm your numbers up. You're going to go to another level. You're going to put more detail, not only into the construction costs, you're going to break that down into maybe new stud walls, maybe new doors, how big's the kitchens, how much are the bathrooms, how much are the electrics, how much are the plumbing, how much are the external works, and so on and so on and so on. But equally, you're now going to break it down in terms of your consultants. How much my consultant's going to charge me for the structural engineer, moving those walls, designing some steel lintels. The architect for changing the facade, for changing the roof, for putting a courtyard in, for coming up with the new layouts, and so on and so on. That's one stage. And of course, now you're going to move forward. Maybe you go in for your planning or your permitted development rights. Maybe that comes back slightly differently. Could be slightly better, could be slightly worse. Now you've got to go back and tweak your design. Maybe you couldn't get that extension that you wanted. Maybe you can't actually get the extra flats in that you needed. Maybe you can't get enough adequate lateral lighting, in which case your layout's changed. We now need to go back and revisit all of those numbers, particularly the sale numbers. You estimated that you were going to get 6 flats in there, 6 two-bedroom flats, quite large two-bedroom flats. Maybe you can now only get 6 flats, but 4 of them are quite small two-bedroom flats. So maybe you've got to look at the resale value. Maybe you've got to look at the marketplace. Each time you've got to reevaluate. You've got to have a look. And of course, the time from when you buy to the time to when you actually appoint your contractor could be a number of months. Has the market changed? You might remember a few years ago, someone drove a ship into the Suez Canal. They drove it sideways. That stopped a whole flow, a whole inflow of building materials into the country. Building materials went through the roof. Maybe something like that happens, hopefully not as dramatic, but something like that could happen, some instance could happen. So you need to constantly reevaluate those building materials. And of course, the optimistic thing is by the time you actually sell these could be a year ahead. Is the market changing? Hopefully in a positive way. Maybe it's in a negative. Maybe your second exit of a refinance and rent now looks to be more on the cards. But you're constantly got to be reevaluating. It's like a circle that constantly goes round. We have an analysis process here. It's called an IPAD, Initial Project Assessment Data, that all propertyCEO students work on. And the basis of that analysis sheet is that you start it at day 1, and then you revisit it constantly as you go through the development. You always make sure that you are on top of your numbers. Because if you're on top of your numbers, if it's good, that's great. If it's bad, you can flex, you can pivot, you can do something about it. Hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully after hearing today's video, every month you are going to revisit, even if it's for a few seconds, even if nothing's changed, all of your deal analysis numbers on all of your developments. If you like what we do, please like and subscribe and give me some ideas of what you'd like me to cover in one of the next videos. See you soon.